The judgment of Yah is righteous. Enjoy life and enjoy family, because the times are darkening. The Father is not the judge, but Yahusha. Yah is deliverance. So the Father is not the judge. Okay? The Father is not the judge, but Yahusha. Yah is deliverance. Okay? The judgment of Yah is righteous. Enjoy your life and enjoy family, because the times are darkening. The Father is not the judge, but Yahusha. Yah is deliverance. Okay? So, something that is probably impossible for many of you. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it from my perspective. If I were to go and hug one of my sons right now, I would put my ear against his chest. That's to hear his heartbeat. Okay? If the next time any of you hug your children, put your ear against their chest. The hug is going to hit different. You don't know how emotional you can be until you've hugged one of your children in that way. You hear their heart beating, their chest is warm against your ear, and you're squeezing them tight. Now, something that I do is something that many of you could never do. There's a man by the name of Yahushua HaMashiach who I have a greater love for even than my sons. Now, I'll do anything for one of my boys. I'll kill. Well, not anything, right? Some people say, well, they'll do anything for their children. Well, I won't do anything. I'm certainly not going to sacrifice any of my morals. Some of you don't understand that, okay? Morals under the instructions of Christ are absolutely insurmountable. There's nothing that can cross the morals of Yahushua HaMashiach. Nothing and no one. Now, I know many of you don't understand what I just said. You can't comprehend it because many of you will do anything for your children. Anything. Well, there are boundaries. There are boundaries for everything. Okay? And yeah, I'll do anything for Christ, but one thing for sure, Christ is not going to ask me to go against any boundaries according to his instructions. So that's not really going to be much of a problem. But for the most part, I'll do just about anything. I'll do almost anything for the life of one of my children. Okay? Now, there's a man by the name of Yahushua HaMashiach who I have never seen personally, and all of you alive today and the past generations, the generations over the past 2 millenniums, roughly 2,000 years. None of our forefathers within that range have seen him either. The man Yahushua HaMashiach, he walked relatively, or shall I say roughly, give or take, about 2,000 years ago. And no one today, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, your great-great-grandfather, your great-great-great-grandfather, nor your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, or even the great after that, has ever seen Yahushua HaMashiach. But yet there have been people from generation to generation that do believe that he existed, that know that he has existed, and that know who he is, There are even some people that know his true identity. Now, the only way that you can love and have a comprehension for Yahushua HaMashiach more than anybody in your family is to know who he truly is. Now, I want you all to understand something. And I want you all to listen to what I'm saying very carefully. There's only one person in the entire universe that you're supposed to love more than your children and more than your family. Let me repeat that. There's only one person in the universe, one, that you're supposed to have a greater compassion for than your children and your family. Now, I want you all to understand something. As we know, that Christ has said out of his own mouth. I didn't pull the scripture because many of you should remember the scripture because I've read it recently. He says, if there's maybe I did I write it down? I don't think I wrote it down. Actually, I do think I wrote it down. Okay, so before I get to it, let's move forward. Okay? So when a man makes love to his wife, they bond. Now, love is an emotion, but love is primarily an action. See, give me loyalty or give me death. But there are some men without a wife. Now, I'm going to read that again. When a man makes love to his wife, they bond. Now, love is an emotion, but it is primarily an action. See, give me loyalty or give me death. But there are some men without a wife. Now, what I need you all to understand is, let me speak to the men without a wife for a minute. Some of you allow that to turn you into players or male whores. Some of you allow that to make you become bitter. And some of you are very insecure from past relationships. Okay? So, I'm going to read something to you. I'm going to read something to you. I want to go to I want to go to Isaiah 4:1. I want to go to Isaiah chapter 4, verse 1. Isaiah chapter 4, verse 1. It says, and in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own food and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by your name, to take away our reproach. So, let me read the next scripture. In that day the branch of Yahuwah shall be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and appealing for those of Israel who have escaped. Okay? So, the scripture says that in that day, so in what day is this referring to? Now, I understand what the stumbling block is. The stumbling block is belief, and the stumbling block is lack of fear. Okay, so the only reason why someone would lack fear of Elohim, of the true Elohim is because they lack faith. That's the only reason why. Because if you truly believed, then you would fear. So faith is the principal thing. Now, I want you all to listen, because I'm just going to read this scripture over again. It says, and in that day, what day? It says, verse 2 says, in that day the branch of Yahuwah shall be beautiful and esteemed. Who is the branch of Elohim? Who is the branch of the Creator? Does anybody know who the branch of the Creator is? The branch of the Creator is Yahushua HaMashiach. Now, Yahushua is the Creator. So, the power within Yahushua is the Creator. So, it says that Christ in that day shall be beautiful and esteemed, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and appealing for those of Israel who have escaped. So have you ever went like into a beautiful pasture? You ever seen like on a movie how the at the end of a movie or something like that, and all beautiful things are happening, all good things, nothing but good things are happening. Everything ends well, right? This big beautiful field, and they're running towards one another or whatever the case, all that foolishness, right? Well, things will really look like that when Christ returns, when he makes everything new. Not immediately as he returns, but during the 1,000-year reign, that's how everything is going to look. Everything is going to be so peaceful, and everything's going to be so great for 1,000 years. Okay? And beyond. But just to give you all an FYI. So it says, in that day, there will be, in that day, 7 women, during the reign of Christ, 7 black women are going to want to be called by the name of one black man. Meaning they're going to want to marry that black man. They're going to want to be called by his name. And more so, it says here that these women say, we will eat our own food and wear our own apparel. So in other words, they're going to clothe themselves, they're going to feed themselves, they're going to work for themselves. Right? Now, that's what they're going to say. Now, it's going to be the kingdom, so they'll live in royalty. They won't need to do those things actually, but that's the mindset that they're going to have. That's how desperate it's going to be, that they want to be called after, that they're going to want to be married. You black women are going to want to be married. Those of you who escape, those of you who make it to the kingdom, because many of you won't. But just to give you an FYI, this is what's going to take place. This is the mind frame that the majority of black women are going to have during the kingdom. Okay? And I believe whatever woman is not wanting to be married will be put to death. But I'm not going to say that with any authority right now. Okay? The spirit is for some reason, the spirit is telling me that. And if it's false, then it's not the spirit. But we'll look into that a little deeper. Okay? But that's basically what's going to happen during the reign of Christ. So it says to take away our reproach. So it's going to be a shame for a woman to not be married during the reign of Christ. Okay? Just like really it's almost a shame now. But due to many of you women out here do understand that you do vastly outnumber your men. And that's part of Satan's plan. So there are some good women out here that have not been taken held of because, there are truly, to be honest with you, there are um, lack of good Israelite men out here now. There are a lot of good Israelite men out here, but a lot of us are already married, and a lot of you brothers are already married. So, for the most part, for many of you brothers whom right now whom are single, there's many reasons why you're single because um, because of the way society is. I'm not going to say because black women are untrustworthy. I'm more so going to say because of the wiles of the devil and how he has everything set up and how many women are beguiled by Satan and they follow his ways unknowingly. And many black women don't know how to be wives. And there are many women of the other nations too that are coming up now here in this Babylon, here in this wicked America, who are not understanding what it means to be a wife either. In fact, now it's pretty much most women coming up today desire not to be wives. So uh, let's move forward, right? And when I hug my mother and hold her tight and tell her that I love her, I have to understand that there's two types of love out here. You have Christ's love and you have Satan's love. Okay? Now, I'll read Luke 14 and 16. Luke 14 and 16. Okay? Luke 14, and we're going to go to verse 16. And it says, "Then he said to him, a certain man gave a great supper and invited many." So I want you all to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. Because us as men, we have to understand something very important. But not just us as men, but our women have to understand this as well. And I'm mainly, this message is more so directed toward the Israelites. It's more so directed toward my people. But as I always say, if there's anyone from another nation that is tuned in and you're listening to this message, then welcome. If you are a person if you are an individual of another nation and you are concerned about Revelations 1:15, if you respect Revelations 1:15, then welcome. Certainly, this message can give you some insight, okay, and some direction, okay. So, but mainly, this message is to you black men and women across the world, okay, who's listening to this message. I want you to pay very close attention. Okay? Then he said to, this is Luke chapter 14, Luke chapter 14, and I'm starting at verse 16, and I think I'm going to read down a little bit, probably like to verse 27. It says, "Then he said to him, a certain man gave a great supper and invited many people." So this certain man, Christ is actually referring to himself. Christ is referring to himself. Okay? And he's talking, what he's saying is that, but he's speaking metaphorically. He's speaking in a parable. And Christ is basically saying that, what did he say? So Christ is going to say, this is a parable he's going to give. He's going to say, a certain man gave a great supper and invited many, okay, and sent his servant at supper time to say to those who were invited, "Come, for all things are now ready." So there is a certain man, okay, and this man is in heaven, okay, and he invited an entire nation of black people to dinner. Okay, I don't know if supper and dinner is the same thing, okay, but he invited them to a feast. So what I want you to do is understand, I'm going to narrate this as I read it. So there's a king that is in heaven, and he has a nation of people that he's inviting to dinner. Okay? If supper and dinner isn't the same thing, then I apologize. But there's a certain man, and he's inviting an entire nation of black people to come sit down and have a feast with him. Okay? And because he sent his servant to do this, right? He says, "Come, for all things are ready." What are all things that are ready? The slab of steak, the slab of lamb, the bread, the cheese, the milk. It's a great feast going on, okay? Everything laid out so beautifully, nice and hot and warm. And I mean, if you think that your grandma can cook, you see all of these people that's cooking on social media, okay? Don't nobody got no cooks like heaven got, okay? Now, this is very important that you need to understand that this is a real feast. This is not, metaphorically speaking. And many of you, it would make sense that if I said that this was a metaphor, but it's an actual feast, meaning Christ is actually going to eat with those at the marriage supper of the Lamb. Now, the only way to get to the marriage supper of the Lamb is through a catching away. So, I don't want to complicate this, but I want you all to listen, okay? So he says, "Let them know that all the fatlings are ready. All the meat is cooked and baked, and bread and wine, and it's all ready, man. Come throw down," right? Who did he invite? Every single black person on this planet. But they all, with one accord, began to make excuses. The first said to him, "I have bought a piece of ground, and I must go and see it. I ask you to have me excused." And another said, I have bought 5 yokes of oxen, and I am going to test them. I ask you to have me excused." Still another said, "I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come." So that servant came and reported these things to his master. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, "Go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city, and bring in here the poor and the maimed and lame and the blind." So now what happened was that all of these black people that was invited to heaven, to heaven, to heaven, had an excuse not to go. So you got to understand here that in a lot of cases, these people are believers. It's not like they're disbelievers necessarily. Okay? One of them said to him that I have bought a piece of land, and that I have to go and tend to it. Okay? He said, I bought a piece of ground and I must go see it. So there are a lot of you now who have gotten into, and I'm not going to just say, you don't even have to be somebody to whom have necessarily gotten into real estate. You can just have been someone who purchased a home, a lovely home for you and your family. You don't necessarily have to be a real estate broker or agent or investor or whatever many of you all proclaim to be out here. You could just be someone like myself who's just a homeowner, and someone like Jane up the street and Mark around the corner just bought a lovely house maybe, and you say, I have to go and tend to the house. I need to be excused from heaven because I don't think I want to be up there in heaven with all those rules and regulations, right? And another person said here, I bought me some oxen, right? A yoke of oxen. Now, what you need to understand is that, as I told you all on many occasions, as I told you all before, that wealthy people had oxen back in those days, especially back in the days of Abraham. If you had some oxen, then you were doing pretty well. Oxen did work for you. So, what were oxen? Oxen were like, let's say if you go to a factory today, right? Now, okay, let me give a perfect example. A Rolls Royce, right? Rolls Royce, I was told, for the most part, were handmade, handcrafted cars. I don't know if there's so much anymore. But at once upon a time, sure, they had to mold out the frame and things of that nature, but for the most part, Rolls Royces were handcrafted. They were handcrafted, right? Just like you have some furniture out here that is handcrafted, right? So we know that Toyota doesn't handcraft all of their cars, right? Why? Because it would simply take forever, right? So they have to get machines in order to put these cars together swiftly, right? Sure, they got people operating the machines, but for the most part, the machines are doing all the dirty work. Well, that's about as good an example as I can give you about oxen. So back in those days, some people, poor folks, they had to till their own field. If you purchased an ox, then you were a wealthy man or a wealthy woman because the oxes were sold. It's not like, some people, they had oxes, through family or whatever the case may be. But for the most part, those that had some bread, they bought oxens, and so the oxens did the dirty work. The oxens, they connected a plow to the oxens, and the oxens would do the plowing. You didn't have to go out and do the plowing yourself. So to purchase an oxen was you may not have to be necessarily wealthy, but you had to have a couple of dollars to purchase an oxen and make your job a lot easier. So some people say, well, hey, listen, I got a yoke of oxen, right? And I have to go and test them, okay? And still another man said, look, man, I'm married, man. I got me a piece of pussy here. And therefore I can't come. Sorry. There are many weak men like that today. There are many weak men out here like that today. They may claim this or they may claim that, but by many of you, by your actions, you find your wife, you put her before your creator. And that's a very foolish and weak thing to do. Moreover, many of you just don't grab your testicles. You just don't grab your nuts and stand for anything at all. You only listen to your women. That's why many of you simply right now, you don't have anybody at all. because you don't know how to stand up and be a man. And many of you choose to put your wives and your children and anything before the creator of heaven and earth. You're not accepting your reasonable service. Okay? Especially if you're a black man. All black men have a reasonable service, and that's to report to the immediate supervisor and commander, Yahushua HaMashiach, on a daily basis. Okay? So, you all have made excuses. So that the servant came back and reported these things to the master. Then the master of the house, being angry. I'll be right back.